Okay, I have started recording. So once again, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. And let me share my screen. Welcome to another session of Azure Power Lunch. We are going to be talking about source databases. And I will really appreciate if you can kind of mute your phone if you're not asking questions. So thank you. So I'm not going to go into slide mode. Just quickly a blurb about myself. I will share the slides after the session on our YouTube channel. So you will have the recording of the video, recording of the session, and as well as the link to the slide deck in the description. So this topic, we are going to be covering Azure Private Link support for the OSS databases. When we talk about OSS databases or open source databases, the three that Azure provides as a managed service are MariaDB, MySQL, and PostgreSQL. So these are the three which we'll be discussing. So before we go into the the implementation and see how it is working, I just want to spend a few minutes on Private Link. First of all, I think everybody is familiar with virtual networking, hopefully knows about virtual networks and how virtual networks connects, make sure that make the connectivity between VMs possible. And in Azure, if you deploy virtual machines in a virtual network, you can connect those VMs together and things like that. You can do VNet peering, which allows you to connect VMs across virtual networks, things like that. But let's say that you have services, PaaS services like storage, SQL, and you want to connect them over a private connection to a virtual network. You want to access them over private connection, period. How that is possible. That's what Private Link provides. So Private Links allows you to access your PaaS services, and not only PaaS services, but also your third-party services. So you can build your own service and expose it through Private Link over a private IP. And it is all done through the Azure underlying infrastructure that makes it possible. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to access those resources through over private a private IP address. And once again, those private IP addresses, you can, if you can, let's say if you have a VNet in Azure, you create a private link for a storage or SQL DB into that VNet, and you have connectivity to on-prem, you can access those databases on-prem as well. So that's kind of a big advantage. Once again, this is so basically securely you can access all those services. Okay, any questions on that before we move on?
Can you repeat that last part again? The on-prem part? You can access the on-prem?
So okay, so think of it. Let's say you have a VNet in Azure that is connected to on-prem through site-to-site VPN or express route, okay? And you have a PaaS service like a storage, SQL, MySQL, and you create a private link to that service. And what private link does allows you to access service privately on a private IP address into that VNet. And we will go through it and explain it as well. So now you have a private IP address in that VNet. And if that VNet is connected to on-prem, from on-prem, you can access that storage account and, over a private connection. So basically, if you can resolve that endpoint on-prem, through DNS or etc hosts, you will be able to access those services from on-prem over private connectivity. You won't be going over public endpoints. Okay. Does that answer your question?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to our topic of discussion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do it in the other way around. We're going to start with a demo and then come on to a few slides. So let's start quickly with a demonstration. So first of all, if you go to the Azure portal, if you want to access the private link panel, just type in private link into search. This is your private link panel. And there are three options here. Build a private connection to a service. This is if you have a Azure service, which is storage or PaaS service or a private link service, that you can use. And then if you want to expose your third-party private link service, that is the last one, so others can access. And if you want to start entirely from end to end, that you want to create a storage account and you want to create an endpoint to it, you can start the middle box. So for us, let me show you here. We have let's go to this resource groups. Let me just do PL. And I'm going to increase. Okay, so there are 3 database servers that I have created: MariaDB, MySQL, and PostgreSQL. So there are 3 servers which are created, and we are going to be accessing, making one of those servers available to. So these are 3 servers. So once again, let's going back to the private link. We're going to start creating the private link. And what we're going to do, we're going to do one from the UI and then one from the command line. So we have an idea of what's going on. This support is available both from the command line and from the UI. Okay, so let's select the resource group. The resource group is this. We are going to select the name of our endpoint. The first endpoint we are going to create is for Postgres. So we're going to call it Postgres P2. Okay, just to make sure. And let's select our resource. So now we're going to select our subscription. That's pretty standard. And the resource type. Look, these are the resource type which are supported so far. You have Cosmos DB, SQL Server, third-party private link, so your own private link services. And let's pick up Postgres. Interestingly, websites are available. So, there is hope that something is coming soon from there.
So Naveed, we cannot select multiple resource type for a given private link.
No, it is. Yeah, that's the exfiltration thing. So we can only create, it's one-to-one.
Okay.
If you have 3 storage accounts, you will have to do, and we will, yes, so you will have to create 3 separate private links.
I have a question. Do all of the resources that you're trying to private link together have to have private links? So for example, if I'm in the Azure Machine Learning Studio or Azure Machine Learning Service, and I want to connect to a database that has private link, but we know Machine Learning Service is not one of those options from your drop-down list, what happens? How does that work?
That's a very good question. So the thing is how you are connecting. This is a question for the Machine Learning Studio team. Do they provide a way where they can resolve private DNS or some sort of a, like a redirection or some way where you, instead of using the public database name, you use the IP address? Actually, no, let me take it back. Since that studio is public, it won't be able to access the private endpoint unless until, you do put a load balancer somewhere. Yeah, let me take it back. No, that won't. Unless until you can host this machine learning studio inside a VNet.
Okay.
Okay. So once you do that, then it will be able to do it. Okay, so it will ask you, this is my, what is the resource name? This is my database server name, and I'm gonna say this is PostgreSQL server. Oh, by the way, this is target sub resource. This is not important in the case of PostgreSQL. It will be very important if we do a storage account. So if we do a storage account, it will ask you it's a blob, queue, website, things like that. Okay, so in this case, it doesn't have much meanings. Configuration, let's say which VNet we are gonna put this endpoint, because remember, it has to go into some VNet. So that's uh, can it has to go somewhere. So and by the way, it will create a private DNS zone for you, all of that. So all of that is there. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna say review, and we are gonna say create. So let it create the endpoint. While it is creating the endpoint, let's do another one from command line. So I have a cheat sheet here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a connection to MySQL through command line. Okay, and let's go into Control L. This is my, I just running it SSH into a VM. So basically, I can do it from the portal. I can do it, portal shell or shell.azure.com. I just chose to go to a VM and run it from there. Doesn't matter. I could have run it from the shell as well. So it's just my choice. So as you can see here, same thing. I'm providing the name of the endpoint. This is my resource group. Then we have VNet name, subnet name, resource ID of the connection of the resource. And just keep in mind, it is the entire, you can get it, the resource ID from the properties of that resource. And once again, the group ID is MySQL server. This is an identifier. I think they used it for the resources which has multiple tiers. Okay, all that. So with that, let's press enter. Oops, I did not provide the sudo. Sorry guys, I'm running from a VM, so I just need to sudo. Oops. Okay, I think I have to log in again. Okay, let's not worry about it here. Let's try to do it from the shell. So, that's the demo part, fun part, shell. Let me quickly go here and run it from here. So give it 1 second. Come on, come on. Give it 1 second. So once the shell appears, we will be able to run it. Okay, so let me paste it here. Okay, so this command is running here, and we are creating a private endpoint here. So let's see if it's still going. Let me refresh it. It's still going, so it will take a few minutes to complete. And by the way, so let me just show you what I have here. I have this. This is my, think of it, this is my VNet. And I have a Linux VM and a Windows VM running in this VNet. Okay. And all of these endpoints, and I will try to connect to those endpoints. To those endpoints from those Windows and Linux VMs. Okay. It's very simple. No magic, just a VNet where I'm creating private endpoints, and I'm gonna be, I have 2 VMs running there, Windows and Linux VM, to show the connectivity. This is my Windows VM, and if you can see here, I'm running this MySQL workbench here and Azure Data Studio. Azure Data Studio for Postgres and MySQL workbench for MySQL and MariaDB connectivity. Okay, everybody with me so far? Okay, that's good. So let's quickly go back to our portal. So this link has been created. Let's quickly run the MariaDB script as well. So we have the MariaDB connection ready as well. Okay, so once again, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna paste this command and let's see if it works. And let's see our other endpoint. It's still going. The thing is, and I will show you why it is taking longer, because it is creating a private DNS zone as well. So since we already have the MySQL one, so let's start with the MySQL connectivity. So I'm gonna take, let's first of all, go back to our private endpoint link, private. So we will go on the private link screen and you can see what private endpoint has been created. So as you can see here, these private endpoint has been created. MySQL, it shows PostgreSQL has already been created. So it took a few minutes, but it has created. So let's start with, first of all, the MySQL DB one. Okay, so let's click on that. This is the IP address of MySQL endpoint. So you have a public service that is running in Azure, and you have a private endpoint to that public service in your virtual network. So what we're going to do, we're going to take that endpoint and we are going to go to our machine and we are going to go to its SC host file and we are going to point this endpoint that. Okay. So as you can see here, I have an etc host file which is pointing to MySQL server database. Okay, so this is very important because just keep in mind, just having an IP, it won't allow you to access that. You have to be able to map that IP to the FQDN of the database. Okay, and FQDN of the database, once again, come on, 1 second, let it disappear, or let me make it disappear.
Navid,
Yeah, go ahead.
where did this, the host file? Is it the host file from the VM or?
Host file on the VM. Host
Okay.
file on the VM, wherever, whatever client.
Yeah.
Host file is not the ideal solution. Ideally, what you should use, basically something like a DNS, DNS name or something like that. Host file is just for, experimentation and things like that. Okay, so let's go into the MySQL workbench and let's create a new connection. We're gonna call it MySQL. And by the way, you can connect it from the command line as well. I mean, oh, sorry, this is not the right thing. Let's get the connection name from here. This is the connection name. Let's go in here and this is the host name, and the username is Naveed Sahir at, and just keep in mind, this is one thing that sometime kind of it's not very clear. The whole username is whatever username you type when you are creating the database plus the name of the server. And by the way, if you look at the properties of the database, that name is there. So just keep that in mind. Okay, now let's test the connection and let's supply the password. Okay, so it's connected. Let's say okay, okay, and now the connection is there. If we click on it, it tells us whatever. So there is a schema there, there's a table there, and once we do it, we can get the row. So point is, now I am connecting to this public resource over a private endpoint connection. Okay. So
At this point, do you think it is closed for the public only? It's allowed through only this private link?
okay, private link automatically doesn't do it. So what you can do is, let's go to the database. We are here and let's open a new tab. Okay, let's go to this new tab here. Give me 1 second. And let's go to the resource groups. Resource group name is PL. Let's go here and let's go to that particular database. So this is the one, okay? So right now, what you are doing is you have closed it off. So connection security, allow access to Azure services off, okay? So you cannot access this database from any Azure service. You cannot access from my machine. The only access that is available is through your private link.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So that's okay. So now I just want to show you one more thing here, private DNS zone. So let's refresh it. So you see here, there is a private link.database.windows. Oh, sorry, this one, private link.postgres.database.windows. So this is being created when we created the private link. So that's the difference between created private link from the UI versus on-prem versus command line. If you create it from the UI, it will create a private DNS zone as well. Okay, so that's otherwise, if you just create from command line, you will have to do all those steps by yourself. Okay, so let's click on that record, folks. If you don't mind, can you please mute your phone? So let's so this is the IP address, and what we're gonna do is now we are gonna try to connect to this one, and just keep in mind when you're connecting, you will have to use this kind of fully qualified name to connect to that database. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our virtual machine, that we have for this purpose, and we're going to do, let's create a new connection. And this is Data Studio. It allows you to connect to Postgres as well as SQL Server. So we're going to go to Postgres. This is the database name, and the username is going to be the same syntax. Your the username that you typed at the name of the server itself that you define. Okay, and the password. Let's type in the password. Okay, and let's say connect. Let's say remember password. Let's say connect. You have a connection, and just give it a second. Databases. Yeah, so you have all the databases. You have Postgres, you have tables, system tables. So now you have connectivity. The point is, we tested the connectivity both from, we created the private connection both through the, private link command line as well as the UI. And I'm just gonna go towards the presentation for a second. First of all, any questions?
Do you have a limit on the number of private links?
That's a good question, man. I don't know. There must be a limit, but I don't remember. I think it's 65,000 something, but I'm not sure. That's a good question. I will post it online, what I learned. There must be a limit somewhere, but I'm not aware of it. Okay. So just quickly keep in mind, I just want to share this slide and then we will go next. It's available for Postgres, MariaDB, and MySQL. For Postgres, single server only, not for the hyperscale. Available in all regions wherever general purpose and memory optimized primary. So it is not available for basic. So if you create a database with basic and you are trying to create a private link, it's not going to work. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's only available for general purpose and memory optimized pricing tier. Okay, and of course you can do it from both portal and CLI. Okay, second thing is, this is the scenario I talked about. So let's say you have a virtual network. that is connected to on-prem, with site-to-site VPN or express route, and you create a private link connection to these databases, or per se um, any Azure resource, what will happen is you will be able to access these resources from your on-prem desktop, given that you set the DNS or etc host file to route your request there. Okay, so I think that was a question that came up. So this is kind of a pictorial description of how you can access that. Okay, just I want to clarify one thing. Private link allow, when you do create a connection to private link, you can do it in two ways. There is auto, when you control the both sides. So let's say that you have a VNet where you have the ownership and you own the service as well, and you're trying to create a private link to that service into your VNet. In that case, it's auto approval. Nothing happens. We just approve. There is a manual process as well, where somebody, let's say that there is another group in your organization which need private link connectivity to your database, and you make a request to it, and they will have to approve it. Right now, these open source databases does not support manual private connection. They only support auto approval of private connections. Okay, that's because if you try to do manual, it will either fail or just hangs. So you have to do auto approval, means that you have to own both sides of the aisle, both the person, the requester, and what requested side as well. Okay, so we have 2 minutes. Any questions?
For Microsoft SQL, can you access that from on-prem in the same fashion as these other open source?
Yes.
Okay.
You're talking about Azure SQL for Azure SQL database. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Azure SQL. So far, these services are supported. Azure SQL, storage, third-party services where you have a standard load balancer, any service that is sitting behind a standard load balancer, the 3 open source databases. So these are the services which are so far supported.
Okay. And the one you in the drop down, there was a web. Are web apps going to be available?
Yes.
The private IP support, so the
Yes. So
ACE will no longer be needed.
I mean, ACE. Okay. So I think that's a different discussion. ACE has comes into picture when somebody is like trying to control all traffic to their instances. It's like because you're running it inside in your VNet. Okay. With private link, when that is available for web apps, you still be accessing web apps running in the multi-tenant environment, but it will be accessible over a private IP. So that's different. So it some organization may not need ASC, but it is not the same as app service environment. And probably when it comes out, we will have a session and explain it, like when you need ASC versus when you need app service.
Thank you.
Okay.
And is this a public or private preview?
It's a public preview, man. It's public. And everything, okay. So Power Lunch, everything we discuss is public preview. There is no NDA discussion here because it's open to everyone. We don't know if they have an NDA or not. It's open to customers, partner. And once again, if you have your customers, I mean, if you have any CSAs here, please feel free to forward it to your customers or partners, because it's we only discuss public stuff here, or any private preview which is announced. If in some cases, sometimes there's a limited public preview which is invitation only, and it's publicly announced, then we will discuss it here. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
we're right on time. Okay. Any other questions?
How does it pick up the IP from the VNet? How does it get that IP?
It will automatically pick up an IP. If
You
it
need-
is, Yeah, go ahead.
Do you need to have anything in the VNet or just open IPs?
No, just open IPs. So you will tell it it's a subnet, and it will pick up an IP from that subnet.
And it'll check to make certain it's not used?
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very good.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, and happy, have a great weekend, and we will talk next weekend.
Thank you so much, Navid. Appreciate it.